Joining me now to break down the issues that matter most to voters is Boyd Matheson, an opinion editor for Deseret News. So Boyd, when we look at the primary races, now we're a little bit deeper in and we're now looking ahead to the general election races, but I think there's still a conversation to be had about what we've seen so far this primary season. So when we look at a lot of the congressional races, what have been your takeaways from this?
Yeah, there haven't been a lot of big surprises in a lot of those primary races. You sort of see the same group kind of moving through, and it actually plays to your point, Alex, that we keep complaining about a lot of these people in elected office. We look back at Washington and we see a lot of fake fights, a lot of false choices. We're watching it right now with the stimulus package, where you have no members of Congress in town except for the lovely law firm of Pelosi, McCarthy, Schumer, and McConnell, and they're all behind closed doing it. So the American people are complaining about that, and yet we keep voting these same people in. So while we like to look at it that way, this is a we the people issue in terms of what do we really want and how are we going to really hold people accountable to do what they say they do on the campaign trail.
And I think you bring up a good point, because a lot of times we hear in the media, for example, we'll use the members of the so-called squad as an example, that they're facing tough primaries. In fact, in Ilhan Omar's district, even her home newspaper endorsed her primary opponent. Yet we see the results then, and these candidates aren't even really coming close. I mean, Ilhan Omar walked away with a huge percentage, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, I mean, the list goes on, and they're not very close of races. And now as we look ahead to the general election, a lot of the people that a lot of media analysts and a lot of polling analysts say are vulnerable are more establishment figures. They say that Mitch McConnell may be facing a tough race. Lindsey Graham may be facing a tough race. Is that speaking to the idea that maybe these more comfortable characters are ones who may be facing a more hard challenge?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope those that are comfortable get really uncomfortable on both sides of the aisle, actually, because that's really the problem. Because those are the very people who are convincing us that we're too divided as a country to deal with any issue, whether it's a stimulus package after a pandemic or healthcare or immigration. The American people are not nearly as divided as people in Washington want us to believe. They want us to believe that because if they convince us that we're too divided to deal with issues, that means the status quo remains, and it means they get to stay in power because they can make the case, you can vote for anyone you want, but if you don't vote for me, you're going to lose power and control and influence. And so that's the case. And again, I keep coming back to this as a we the people issue. We really do have to step up and say we need to make the comfortable very uncomfortable in the fall.
I think you're exactly right. And I think that what you're saying about the American people wanting change on both sides of the aisle, I mean, that exists. And you could look at, for example, the progressive movement on the left. They voice a lot of the same frustrations as many of those who support President Trump on the right. They don't like the way that the media is covering a lot of their candidates. They don't think that they're necessarily getting a fair shake when it comes to representation in government, because there's these career politicians who have been there for the better part of decades. And these new people who are falling on the right or the left aren't seeing their representation. So do you think that this speaks to a populist movement that's not only taking place in the United States, but all around the world for that matter?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Alex, because this is the wraparound where you do have this populism going on the far left and on the far right. But the thing we have to remember is it's actually really easy to incite a populist us versus them battle.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do the hard work and heavy lifting to get to the insight where you can actually govern. Anyone can incite a riot. It takes a lot more to actually get to governing. And so the thing that we have to look at that nobody is talking about is there's a group of Americans, we're calling them the movable middle. They're not independents. These are people who are either registered Democrats or registered Republicans. They probably crossover vote. But these are people who have disengaged in the process for the very reasons you pointed out, Alex. They're exhausted by both sides and all of the rhetoric and no change. So they've disengaged in the process. The thing that we found, and I think this is the key to the 2020 cycle, is the only thing that will get these people to re-engage actively in the process and show up and vote is community, compassion, personal responsibility, and opportunity. Not a lot of things you're hearing anyone talk about on the campaign trail right now. I happen to live in a place where those things are alive and well, where you can actually look at things like the institutions of civil society, where you have a nice free market economy, you have strong institutions, whether that's faith groups or charity groups, businesses that are involved in their community, and people are looking for that. And because of that, Utah is one of the most upwardly mobile places on the planet. for those very reasons. And that's what people want. That's what people want to engage in. I want opportunity. I want people to take personal responsibility. I care about my community, and I'm compassionate to those who need. That's the American spirit and the American dream. I don't think either side is doing a great job right now of making that case, but there's about 21% of the voting populace who, if they hear that, they're going to get on board. I think they'll decide the election on the first Tuesday in November.
I think you're exactly right. And if it's not this election, too, there's no doubt that there's an appetite there among the American electorate for something new, something refreshing. And even when we talk about Bernie Sanders supporters or President Trump supporters, there are common grounds. I mean, especially when it comes to trade. I remember back in 2016, President Trump is on video saying that he hopes that Hillary Clinton didn't pick Bernie Sanders because he's on line with a lot of the same messaging, whether it's taking on the establishment, taking on elites, as he calls them, or fighting for a new trade. I mean, it's something, too, that there's a big chunk of this population that doesn't have a representation right now. And I think if it's not this election, it'll be in the near future where those people end up crossing boundary lines, at least to some degree. But Boyd Matheson, I appreciate you coming on tonight and breaking down this issue for us. Thank you.